Hello and welcome to the Spirit of the Times podcast. I am Matan Hasidim, and today I'm joined here in Jerusalem by a very, very special guest who came all the way from India, Professor Makaranad Paranjape. Professor Paranjape is a leading scholar on Indian culture, nationalism, and politics. His books, including JNU, Nationalism in India's Uncivil War, The Death and Afterlife of Mahatma Gandhi, and Swami Vivekananda, Hinduism and India's Road to Modernity, all of those exploring the ideas and figures shaping modern India. Professor Paranjape, I'm really honored to have you here.
Thank you, namaste, and shalom.
Shalom, shalom. So we really have a lot to unpack today. Your views on October 7th and the war here in Israel, India-Israel relations, and the connections between Jewish and Hindu cultures. But first, since October 7th and the start of the war, Israel has received quite a bit of support from many Indians. The Israel ambassador to India joked that he had to turn down requests from Indians wanting to enlist in the IDF. How do you explain this support?
So this is absolutely true because I was following some of these requests on social media, and I even had to tell some young people, you can't do that because you're not an Israeli citizen. But it's interesting how I must also tell you that the support has waned. And now that almost 1.5 years or more have gone by, the other narrative has become strong. And the balance of force has also tipped, and the numbers of 45,000 or 40,000 dead on the other side has now brought down that level of tremendously enthusiastic support. So in the beginning, there was so much anger at the horrific things that Hamas terrorists had done. And it was that anger and also the idea that this is a small nation which has always helped us. And we must support them because in India we know that in every war that we fought with Pakistan, we had critical support from Israel, whether it was officially given or under the table. You have served in the intelligence and you know that intelligence is crucial to winning wars. And Israel has always supported us. And the earlier governments in India were not very open about this support. But now, after Modi, the support and partnership are absolutely clear. And it's also decoupled from our relations with the Arab states. So we want good relations with the Arabs, especially the Emiratis and also Saudi and others. And we want wonderful relations with Israel. So we've crossed that camel's back. So the support for Israel was also because the Hindus felt very deeply identified with the Jews when they were attacked by the Muslims, you see. So there is a religious angle to this affinity which has been ignored so far.
So do you think that it's correct to say that Indians draw inspiration from how Israel stands up against radical Islam?
Very much. In fact, we have a lot to learn, but I would say that the sympathy comes from how we feel we've been treated the same way. Our women have been captured and raped and also tortured and even sold in the markets of Lahore and other parts in Afghanistan. Not too long back, I'm talking about just a few years, around the independence time when India was invaded, Kashmir, parts of Kashmir were captured, and Hindu and Sikh women were actually abducted. So this whole thing rings familiar to us, this using women as instruments of war to torture and kill them. And during the partition, this happened a lot, especially on the western side, whereas in Bangladesh, it didn't happen. So using women didn't also happen in the civil war in Sri Lanka. So in India, among the Hindus, there's been now an understanding that when Islamist radicals deal with those they consider kafirs or those they consider their enemies, to torture, to rape and kill, or use women or hostages is a part of their strategy. And this awakening in the Hindu intelligentsia is one reason for the tremendous support.
I would like us to return in the end, maybe if we're going to talk about solutions about Islam. But I want to refer to a very interesting article you wrote last May in which you discussed the left-wing and Islamist protests on Ivy League universities' campuses in the United States. And among other things, you wrote that, I'm quoting, the writing on the wall is clear, a Jewish-Hindu alignment in academic and intellectual circles. Whether it will actually come about remains to be seen, end quote. So a lot of question there, how this alignment needs to forge and why.
See, first of all, we have to address a puzzle. And the puzzle is, why are the leftists, who are atheists, who have no use for religion, and why are they aligning with Islamists and radicals on US campuses and elsewhere in India, in Bangladesh? And it's, I think, a kind of worship of death.
This is very interesting. It's not just on campuses in the West. You say that it's in India and Bangladesh too.
And in Bangladesh, when there was the coup and the Islamists, the Jamaat party, the Jamaati, not
Islamia,
party,
Jamaat Islamia.
Yeah,
right.
The Jamaat-e-Islami, which traces its lineage to Maulana Maududi, they became the power. The first people they killed were not just the Hindus, but also the leftists.
That helped them to do the coup.
Exactly.
Just like in Iran.
Just like in Iran. The same with Afghanistan. Also, when the Taliban came to power, they killed all the leftists. Okay? Now, the question is, why do they align? This is a puzzle. And the answer to me is, unfortunately or fortunately, a psychological and spiritual answer. It's not a political answer. I think they worship death. If not worship, I don't want to offend anybody, but they love the cult of death, whereas we love the cult of life. We want life. Wow. We want to enjoy life. We believe in life, but they are so negative. So I feel that whenever they are always going like a spanner in the works, they want to destroy, they are counter-systemic. So the counter-systemic forces get together. Anyhow, now to answer your question, how is this Hindu-Jewish alliance possible? It's very difficult because many Hindus are leftists, just as many Jews are leftists, especially in the West. So first of all, they are a divided lot from both sides. That's why we have to identify the slightly more conservative elements in both the Hindu as well as the Jewish intelligentsia in the diaspora, because Hindu diaspora is very powerful, like the Jewish diaspora. So it needs a two-pronged strategy: India, Israel, and then the diaspora, largely in the US, because it's very prosperous and now powerful. So these two-pronged strategies have to be worked out carefully. And I'm always interested not just in talk, but in alliances based on, I don't want to call them contracts, but on compacts, on common interests, as well as on a lot of discussion and debate, which is a part of the Jewish tradition and also, to a large extent, a part of the Hindu tradition. I like it to be deeply thought out. I just don't want trendy things happening just for the moment.
Yes.
So it's a long-term prospect for the next, not 50, 100, for the next 1,000 years. So it must be thought out very carefully.
You told me earlier that you think that Israelis had a lot to give, to offer to Indians, and that Indians have, the Hindu tradition has a lot to offer to Israel. What do you think are the main points?
See, I must tell you that you asked me what I felt when I came here. I think that the state of Israel is one of the most extraordinary creations, political creations in modern times, or maybe for thousands of years. The way it came about and what you've accomplished today is so out of this world, so to speak. It's so special that every day I see new proofs, new evidence of this. But also interestingly, coming here has made me appreciate India, because the Indian state is also a miracle.
Wow.
The nation state of India. And I tend to be impatient with India because I wanted to progress much more fast and to reach its potential. But coming here has made me understand how fortunate we are. We are fortunate geographically. You know, we have a beautiful land with natural protection. We have fields.
A bit bigger than Israel.
A bit bigger. And the population is also a bit bigger. It's just slightly bigger.
Yes.
And all the resources, all the, different crops and minerals and fields and the human potential of India. Indians are some of the most intelligent people in the world, like the Jews. So what I'm trying to say is that it made me appreciate what we have better. So we have so much to learn from Israel and so much to give. And this would require a little more time to spell out.
Okay.
But I can tell you some key points if you like.
I would like, yeah, of course.
Well, for example, we need to learn the sense of unity, national pride, dedication to the community. Indians are very individualistic. We need to learn efficiency, creativity, the way you've solved your problems or you approach your problems. I find not just creativity and innovation in every aspect of Israeli life. See, you have a problem. There's very little water. You find the way to solve the problem. You have another problem, food. You find ways. Food technology is very advanced here. So the constant attempt to solve the problem, whatever the problem is, whether land is a problem, you find a way either through conquest or through some kind of rapprochement. You get more land, you settle. So I can name 100 things. Security is a problem. You find ways to counter that, like how Hezbollah, you blew up the pagers. Can you imagine that? That is an incredible thing. And look at the message it sends out. You know, your enemies must be, pardon my language, SHI -- in their pants because they don't know who's watching them, what you can do.
Yeah.
Can you imagine the level of intelligence, efficiency, creativity, dynamism, determination? Now, if India had a fraction of that, our enemies would also be -- which they are not.
Yes.
So we have so much to learn. And what do we have to offer? See, by the way, Indians are also extremely resilient. Flood, famine, genocides, wars, you name it.
Can I say poverty?
Poverty, the biggest, so to speak, challenge of India. We have survived through all of these and we have thrived. And we are a happy people. You know, you talk to any Indian, they're smiling. Even the beggars are smiling in India.
Right.
And we are very clever. So we are great survivors, but at an individual level. We are not collective. Our collective sense of ownership, identity, responsibility is not that high. But
So
what I'm trying to say...
national essence that you want to
we
bring
want
from
to
Israel, maybe.
Yes, we need to cultivate the sense of pride, responsibility, and sometimes I feel we should have national service, like in Israel. It'll teach people something, you know.
You know, it's interesting because you talked about the high-tech nation, and Israel, like India, is a country with an ancient tradition, managing complex relationships between, with West modern culture and its own culture. As India becomes an economic and technological powerhouse, how can the Hindu tradition be preserved in a way that doesn't contradict modernity, but still maintains cultural uniqueness? Maybe you can see it in Israel. I don't know. I don't want to put words in your mouth.
Very much, very much. And one of the things I want to say is that in Israel, I found people of so many opinions. I found atheists. I found Orthodox people. I found mystics. I found deeply religious, observant Jews. And I found nationalists who are secular. They don't want to have to do with religion. They don't go to the synagogue. India is a bit like that. Among the Hindu society, we have such a rich diversity. But we are using technology in the sense that now all the Vedas are available online, on apps. The things which were considered secret are no longer secret. All forms of knowledge are readily available. On social media, there are posts to educate people because our national education has no spiritual or religious education at all. But because of technology...
Don't take it from Israel then.
You know, I mean, the point is that we need a little more training. But what we are lacking, I feel, in India is deep thinking and more investment in cultivating knowledge for its own sake. But I'm saying we are using technology to preserve Hindu thought, to preserve Hindu traditions, to disseminate these traditions. And we have so many paradoxes, like our best priests are being exported because there's a demand for them in the diaspora and they're willing to pay them more.
Yes.
But we are using modern technology to preserve tradition. Yes.
So we've been talking about the elites, the liberal or progressive elites in the United States. I can see the cultural decline caused by progressive in the West. Many Western conservatives find inspiration in countries like India and Israel that blend modernity with tradition together. Do you think this gives our traditions and our struggle in our nations a global role in resisting woke culture like all over the world?
Entirely true, I believe, though we haven't operationalized and communicated our great insights. For example, in India, among the Hindus especially, we had a renaissance, so-called renaissance in the late 18th and 19th centuries. And I believe this Renaissance has so much to offer to the world of how to manage modernity, what modernity means, because Gandhi was, we'll come back to the Mahatma at some point,
yes.
but in Hind Swaraj, he said modernity as we know it is suicidal because it does not have,
spiritual awakening that is compared to the technological power, yeah.
You unleash power, but
Yeah.
you don't have the awakened consciousness, with the result that you can overconsume and destroy yourself. You can medicalize yourself and destroy yourself. You can create weapons of mass destruction and destroy yourself. Humanity can destroy the planet, global warming. So Gandhi was deeply aware. But before Gandhi, I'm saying the big thing that Hindu civilization did in modern times is to understand the relationship between rationality, which for the West, after the Industrial Revolution and after the Renaissance, became the driving force of progress.
Right.
So the relationship between rationality and wisdom. Because in Hindu civilization, we hold wisdom, illumination, spiritual enlightenment, intuition to be higher than reason. Reason is not a master. Reason is a good servant. And the great Hindu, I would call them the modern rishis, they found a way to combine the two. Whereas in Islamic modernity, I find, though I'm not an expert and I don't want to offend anybody, they reject this reason, they reject scientific progress, and they go back to the scriptural authority, which means they lose out on progress, unfortunately.
Right.
Hindus didn't do that. So even today, the levels of education, innovation, and acceptance of technology between Hindus and Muslims within India is so much different. So
if I want to conclude,
Yes.
you say that Hindu civilization found actually the road between the dangers of the reason. Reason is good, but there is a danger with it that it can block all spirituality. Something like this.
Absolutely. Not the way in between. I would say the way to combine the two.
Together. Yeah.
And the reason we could do it is we had
Very
done it
interesting.
in the past.
Because we see Jews as we did it.
We did it in the past in India. It was a very
Great.
advanced civilization at the cutting edge of the technology of that period, and we were deeply spiritual at the same time.
Yeah.
So in the 19th century, we found the formula again.
Interesting. There's a very famous book by Lord and Rabbi Jonathan Sachs, The Big Partnership Between Science and, let's say, spirituality. And he says that in Judaism, you can see the core elements of both together. So it's very, very interesting to hear about
I have
it.
4 books on this, edited books on science and spirituality in India, modern India. So this is one area where I deeply believe that the Israeli and the Indian experience can help each other.
Great. So a small question about Gandhi. You wrote a whole book, The Life and the After Death of Mahatma Gandhi.
No, the death and afterlife.
The death and afterlife. I think the afterlife is more important than the death, if I recall one of your lectures. So you mentioned that he himself recognized that his pacifistic approach, let's say, didn't always work in reality. He also advised Zionist leaders to do nonviolent protest against the Arab threat. I think we can see it's not very, very realpolitik, let's say. Is there a political important message that we can take from Gandhi to today's politics?
Yes, so Gandhi is a set of curious paradoxes. He was a very practical man and a very impractical man, both at the same time. He was very, should I say, calculating, and even like a lawyer, he was very systematic in certain respects and so foolish, foolishly trusting. In other words, he was very
naive, let's say.
Naive in some respects. And I think his greatest failure, as I tried to show in my book, which he admitted, by the way, he admitted that his idea of nonviolence was not understood by most Indians. And the reason he said that is, for him, nonviolence was not the weapon of the weak. It was the weapon of the strong, those who were fearless, those who had overcome their fear of death. And for him, the nonviolence was more powerful than the atomic bomb. He said that one nonviolent person could change an entire neighborhood, could change an entire city. One nonviolent, truly, because he felt that he could escalate the force And then you can ask, what is this nonviolence? It seems like some sort of mystical or
Right.
some sort
Mystical
of
idea.
mystical. Actually, it's only the power of love. See, love disarms the violence of the other. You know, love is a very powerful force if you can truly escalate love. And Gandhi demonstrated it. He would come to a room full of extremely violent people who had just killed a few people, or go to a neighborhood, and he would go unarmed there. And maybe he had the charisma or he had the miraculous strength. We don't know. But when he started talking, when these people came, he could disarm them. And yet the paradox is, he couldn't disarm one assassin who wanted to kill him. Why? And I argue in my book that he planned his own assassination. He was a partner to his own assassination because...
He actually talked about the opportunity that he's going to be assassinated, I think,
yes.
a couple of days before he actually got shot, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. He even told his grandniece that if I die of any disease or even as much as a pimple, tell the whole world I'm not a Mahatma, I'm not a great soul. Tell them I'm a charlatan and a liar. But if I die with bullets on my chest, then... ... He didn't say I'm a Mahatma. Then he said, let people make up their minds. And today, unfortunately, Gandhi is disliked by the Hindus in India, just as many Zionists dislike Gandhi, because even with Hitler, Gandhi said, he wrote to Hitler, he's saying, you're doing very bad things, don't do this. Of course, Hitler didn't reply. And he told the Jews that you must resist Hitler non-violently, and most Zionists didn't like it. Martin Buber wrote to him, and of course, they couldn't meet, etc. But what I'm trying to say is, Zionists as well as Hindutva, people do not like Gandhi. In fact, the man who killed Gandhi was an advocate of Hindutva. But I can go on this.
Hindutva is the ideology of the right-wing politics in India? Nationalist
it was. I would call them the Hindu nationalists. So it's not just right-wing. I mean, you can be right-wing without being Hindutva. But Hindutva combines religion and politics. That's what makes Hindutva different.
So it's like me, I'm a Zionist and
it's a bit
I'm
like
an
Zionism.
Orthodox Jew.
Exactly. It's a bit like that. Why do I say it's a bit like that? Because the very founder of Hindutva, Savarkar, was not a religious man. So how do you reconcile that? For him, it was a political ideology. So to me, even today, I think Hindutva is a political thing, not a religious or a spiritual thing. And I want to mention this, that Gandhi challenged, because a lot of Hindutva people in his life, last days, they hated Gandhi, they made slogans, they protested against him. And he said, I invite them to a dialogue. I'm a better Hindu than them, he said.
Okay, when we're taking it to India today, we talked about the dangers to India today from radical Islam, let's say. How can you take the messages of Gandhi?
I want to say that radical Hinduism is also a danger to India, not just radical Islam. But Gandhi misunderstood, I feel, or didn't fully comprehend how dangerous radical Islam was. And I think that was his greatest failing. And I think he recognized it in the last days of his life. And I've shown it in my book that when Kashmir was invaded, Gandhi the nationalist became greater than Gandhi the pacifist. And he told Nehru, send the troops there. And he then wrote a wonderful article in his journal saying that the soldier who with a gun is defending innocent women, children, is nonviolent. He changed his definition of violence. So most people who dislike Gandhi do not read this aspect of Gandhi. And he also went to the mosques after independence and said, give up your weapons if you want to belong to India. Don't think of Pakistan anymore. So the Hindu right-wing political Hindus, they hate Gandhi because they think he weakened the Hindus. It's like making them tie their hands at the back and then fight with these deadly people who are and sending them like lambs to the sacrifice. So they just like, but so what I want to
give
say
the
is,
second cheek, let's say.
So and they cut off your neck. So Gandhi misunderstood radical Islam. And I think Savarkar or the Hindutva, they understood it. And they saved a lot of Hindus during the partition. They brought them back. They saved women. So this has to be accepted. And the point is, radical Islam is a very big threat to the very existence of Hindu civilization. And this is something that many, many Indians, even some of the liberal Indians, have today understood.
Yeah.
Partly because of the experience of Israel.
Maybe a danger for humanity, let's say. Let's talk a little bit about academia. Another interesting parallel between Israel and India. So in Israel, there is a clear problem when the academic establishment is dominated by left-wing and progressive elites. In your book, you argued that a similar phenomenon happened actually in India. Can you briefly explain to our Israeli audience that think that Israel maybe is a unique thing on it, how this happened?
See, this is very interesting as a parallel between Israel and India. India becomes independent in 47, Israel in 48. And our first many prime ministers are liberal, like Ben-Gurion. Like, your Labour Party was in power till the 70s.
Yeah.
And
I wouldn't say Ben-Gurion was liberal, but he was a socialist. Yeah, he was secular.
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
By liberal, I mean more on the socialist side.
Yeah.
And he was a great admirer of Gandhi as well.
Right.
So Nehru is a big socialist, the Fabian socialist, admirer of the Soviet Union, the centralized planning, and all of that. And the liberalism of Nehru became the official Indian state doctrine. So India had no religion. As a state religion, you have Judaism. But the Indian state religion, if you want to use that term, was secularism and socialism, so to speak. These were our state ideologies.
Yeah.
And it's only after the demise of, Rajiv Gandhi, he was assassinated in 1991 in May, that the other ideologies slowly came up. So, and the BJP came to power, with Atal Bihari Vajpayee first, and then
BJP
with Narendra.
is like the Israeli Likud, let's say?
Yes,
Okay.
indeed. And so now, by the way, the shift is almost 180 degrees. The so-called right wing is the dominant force in Indian politics. And I believe they're going a bit too far.
But not in the intellectual realm.
In the intellectual realm, what has happened is what I call smash and grab. So all the institutions have been taken over by the right wing, more or less.
Left wing.
No.
By the right wing.
Yeah, what I explained to you is originally they were all left wing. And now one by one, they're being taken over by the right wing.
Oh, okay.
Because they're state funded.
Okay.
So the state makes all the appointments. And they've just put their people everywhere without having the intellectual capital. So there's a great intellectual vacuum in India just now. And this is something that I personally, as an intellectual and a writer and a thinker, have tried to counter by pointing out. I was the director of the Indian Institute of Advanced Study, and I was pointing out that more than ideology, we need intellectual competence. And ideology can take a second place. And we need deep thinking, we need a lot of publications. So I'll just give you one little example that the right wing thinks that all you do is you just smash up the left and then you denounce them, you ridicule them, and that's it. I said, no, you need to write better books. You need to produce better research because no one is listening to you. You have created not an ecosystem. You have created an echo chamber where everybody is just repeating what they're saying. And outside in the world, in the real world, nobody cares because they don't respect your scholarship. They don't respect, your lack of knowledge and your exaltation of ignorance is only good for you. So because you're in power. So my point is, we are a knowledge society. But you have made a knowledge society into a society that worships power only.
Right.
And the Jews say it, the mission of an intellectual is to speak truth to power.
Right.
And I believe the Hindu intellectual should also do that.
Yeah, I think that we should notice that as well. You often use the term nationalism. It's a very, very important term. It seems that in today's intellectual climate, this could seemingly label you as a far-right figure. And I think that you paid a lot of price, in India. How do you defend nationalism in a world that is fearful of this very word?
Yes, but again, I think times have changed. So nationalism was a dirty word. No more. Even Trump is a nationalist. because...
But I think that intellectual circles, it still labels you as a person that no one would like to do a PhD with you, you know?
Well, that was, as I said, that was very
History.
true. That was very true sometime in the past, but it's changing because the globalists are seen with a great deal of suspicion. Because, see, I wrote about this deeply in my book, that the liberals are denounced not because they are liberals, but because they are illiberal. They are hypocritical. So they lack integrity. You know, this is the problem with liberalism. If you really believe that all opinions have a chance and the better opinion wins with better evidence and competition, then nobody would go against them. So instead they do cancel culture. Wokeism is illiberal, it's despotic. In fact, it is dictatorial, and you want to block everybody who disagrees with you.
Can you share with us a little bit about your experience with this concept?
Again and again. In my own university, I was boycotted, branded, and then, you know, if nothing works, they try to bully you, browbeat you, they isolate you. And they do all of this, and this is
why? Because you were a nationalist? Because you were...
Because your ideas are dangerous and you challenge what they say.
Because you're not woke. You're not
woke. And they, like, the academy is close to people who question their dominance, and also, in some ways, who point out that they don't have evidence, that their arguments are weak. So they're afraid to be exposed because it's a conspiracy of silence. So when you're saying such and such, what is your evidence? How do you know? When you ask these questions, you become dangerous. And I got cancelled or blocked in the West, in London, and in the USA, you get blacklisted because, unfortunately, the Indian academics in America are all left-wing, most of them. But here's the thing. What I'm trying to say, nationalism is no longer a dirty word, and the left plays a trick. They say all nationalists are fascists, all nationalists are Nazis. That's not true. You can be a nationalist even if you're a liberal. You can say India first. Now they're saying America first. Trump is saying make America great again. MAGA, which is pronounced as Maha. Maha means great. So I think the world has changed, and I don't think nationalism means you're always, intolerant or
chauvinistic.
Not at all. I mean, I'm a very liberal nationalist. In fact, I always say that though I'm a conservative, I'm really a liberal person because I respect people of different opinions, even different faiths. But I don't want to play the game of accepting something because of the herd mentality that people think in groups. I always say the left hunts in packs. They're a pack animal. Everybody like a herd. See, herd is maybe less offensive. A herd is like sheep. Everybody goes together. But a pack is very dangerous. The wolves hunt in packs. So I think these are two metaphors for me of that woke, liberal left, which is antagonistic to progress, though they call themselves progressive, which is antagonistic to new ideas, though they call themselves liberal. So they hunt in packs, or they're like herd, sheep in herd. And I feel I'm an individualistic person. I want alliances, but I want free thinking, creative thinking. And I think that the way forward is a combination of the creative and the critical. You can't have one without the other.
And speaking truth to power, as you said, in Israel, we are the liberal side are more afraid from the connection between religion and state. Do you think that India could be a state that needs to be out of religion, of Hindu?
You see, I think, as I mentioned,
do you have the same fear in India?
Yes and no, because our religion is not so organized as Judaism is. And in my visit here, people are unhappy with the ultra-Orthodox here who don't serve in the army. They don't want to protect the state and yet get all the benefits. So you see, it's a problem even here. Now, I feel that there is a compromise between these positions. I feel that each person's faith should be their individual matter. I can't interfere with how a Muslim or a Christian in India wants to pray, what they eat, how they dress.
Of course.
They must have freedom.
Right.
But I feel that as a civilizational ethos, I don't want my Muslim co-Indian, my brother, my citizen, whatever, co-citizen, to denigrate my gods, my deities, my way of life, make fun of all the Hindu practices, which was happening all the time. So I think you have to draw a line between a cultural and civilizational ethos. So, for example, suppose I were to live in Israel tomorrow as a visiting professor or whatever, as a lecturer. I may not be Jewish, but I don't think it's right for me to stand on a platform and denigrate, the prophets or Moses or whatever, or even the state. I don't think that's required, because I want to share in this ethos,
Right.
because I draw my bread and water from here. I have a loyalty to the soil that is nourishing me. So I don't want this anti-Hindu ideology to flourish in India under the garb of whether it's Bollywood left or left liberal or whatever they call it. Because I feel I had a big debate with one of the great left, Muslim left writers in Bollywood, very great, celebrity writer and screenwriter. And
What
I
was
said,
his name?
well, you can check on the online. I respect him.
Yeah.
But anyhow, he said to me, you must criticize your deities. You must be an idol breaker to be progressive. I said, Marx said, the beginning of criticism starts with the critique of religion. And I would say to you, the beginning of criticism starts with the critique of Marxism. Can you do it? And he had no answer. And finally, I pushed him, and he said, yes, if you want me to declare I am a kafir, though he's a Muslim. So I said, I respect you for saying it, that your atheism is not afraid of the mullahs. I respect you for saying it. I gave him that respect. So I feel that you do not have to denounce your own tradition or be an atheist to be critical, to be modern. You can be Hindu, you can be deeply spiritual, and we should talk about that, and still be modern, still be critical. I disagree. I disagree with that Marxist idea that the beginning of criticism starts with the criticism of religion. Because for me, it's not a big issue, because Hinduism is not an organized religion. This is the big difference between Judaism and Hinduism. We are not a religion of the book, we are a religion of experiential transformation. So a Hindu cannot be defined by any book or practice. A Hindu can only be defined by their experience.
Completely understood. So before we end with a spiritual note, just a small question again about Islam. Maybe if we want to speak about a solution for Indians and Jewish and Jews in Israel. So do you see a future where true peace and brotherhood are possible between Muslims and non-Muslims? I ask this despite knowing that really many Muslims, both in Europe and in the Indian subcontinent, desire peaceful relations with their neighbors. And still, we see ongoing issues with Muslims around the world, which honestly are connected to the way Islam has historically emphasized war and conquest and expansion across the world since its founding in the 7th century. How do you view the future concerning Islam?
Well, absolutely. Very good question. First of all, I believe a peace is definitely possible. And I believe that it is possible when practicing Muslims renounce, if not denounce, the ideology of radical Islam, violent conquest or killing of non-Muslims, when they renounce or denounce international jihadism, the raping of women, the killing of innocents in the name of any war, religious or otherwise. When practicing Muslims do that, it is happening already. It will have an impact. And in India, a lot of practicing Muslims do not agree with this. They don't have the courage to come out openly, but slowly they are. And in the past, Hindu-Muslim relations have been good, more or less in India, much better than in this part of the world. And there's one more trend that is happening. There are secular Muslims in India who don't do any of this, and they openly don't like it, but their community doesn't respect them. And there are also ex-Muslims in India who are actually talking about some of these troublesome aspects. I have friends who even say that the Quran needs to be re-edited without those...
This is the point. This is the key
But I
point.
must say one more thing.
But
I don't think it's practical.
So problematic.
It's
not
not practical.
problematic to change verses
yes,
in the Quran.
you can't do that. So my suggestion is that when the ulama come together and they say, let's move beyond this. Okay, please, it's there. Whatever the reasons are, let's move beyond. We can't be literalists and iltihad. We must come back to the tradition of interpretation. And this word may not mean this. This word may mean something else. We have to rewrite our commentaries so that we have more liberal ways of interpretation. But we must say, okay, whatever the book may say, whatever the book may, however you may think about it, but these are things we don't do. We don't want to do that anymore. And hey, let's have ethics. Let's bring in dharma back to the table. And I think that's the basis of a peaceful coexistence. We must recognize the right to coexist. The earth belongs to all of us. And as a Hindu, I think earth belongs to animals also. It's not just human beings. So I want animal rights in the sense that what I'm trying to say is that an animal must have some rights, not to just be grown to be eaten. They must have some animals, some chicken should just be running around. Why not? So my point is that we must learn how to do this. And we can. That's where Gandhi becomes very important. Because
if we had time, I know that you wrote a lot about Sri Aurobindo. There's a lot of parallels and connections, deep spiritual connections between Rabbi Cook and Sri Aurobindo. But next time, maybe we're going to do it. So just last question. We want to end really with a spiritual note. So in one of your talks, you mentioned that the Indian people are people that forget, while the Jewish people sanctify the memory of past. It is a people that remembers, you said, and you referred to the Wailing Wall. What do you mean by that?
Yes, so it's not what it seems, because the Indian sacred traditions have Shruti and Smriti. Smriti is memory only. So we also remember, but we have
a large amount of
we have tremendous textual, but they are basically the memories or the texts to help you liberate yourself. So, in other words, we have principled forgetting. Principled forgetting, like principled remembrance, can be the basis of forgiveness. But here I want to bring in Sri Aurobindo and Gandhi. And what I want to say is that the future of humanity is predicated upon a transformation of humanity itself, not just of individuals. So a lot of Hinduism in the past was about individual liberation. But today it's the collective that's important. And what do we mean?
The exodus from Egypt was a liberation of the collective, something like that.
Exactly. But here we mean that all human beings must reach a higher level of consciousness. And Sri Aurobindo here says something important, that war will become psychologically impossible. Only then war will stop, because war starts and ends in the minds of men. How will war become psychologically impossible? That's what Gandhi wanted. He wanted human beings to rise to a level where, if the choice was between to kill or to die, a person would say, you really hate me? Okay, go ahead, because I'm immortal. Nothing's going to... So, if a few...
There is a parallel here between Christian morality, right? And...
I think so. See, basically, where Gandhi said he failed is he felt that humanity was ready, was at the cusp of that transformation, that leap of consciousness, where globally we would become more enlightened, universally, not individually. So I'm saying the hope for humanity is a transformation of consciousness in which we also are whoever we are, Jews, Hindus, Muslims, secular, this, that, and the other. But we are also, there's a species knowledge, there's a species wisdom, there's a species imperative, there's a planetary, there's a planetary imperative for coexistence. And that can't happen only through consensus, only through deals, and only through contracts and negotiations and treaties. It has to happen in the hearts and minds of human beings. And the Kabbalah talks about it, of that sort of transformation. And when you have that consciousness, you have it, I have it, we all have it, we all experience it in different moments of the day and different times of our lives. And we know that there is only one existence. And just as if I know that you and I are not different, we are one existence, different manifestations of one existence, it is impossible for me to think ill of you. It is impossible for me to want your pen or your home or your house or your car. It is impossible. In fact, it's just the opposite. For me, God asks Cain, where is Abel? And Cain says, am I my brother's keeper? I would say, yes, I am my brother's keeper, because there is only one existence. I am responsible for you. Every moment of my life, I'm thinking about your well-being. What will make you happy? Can I make your life easier? Can I carry your burden? Can I heal you if you're sick? Can I give you water if you're thirsty? My entire life is dedicated to making my fellow human beings a little bit better, little bit better.
Wow. So now I'm regretting a bit that I didn't brought my Rabbi Cook's book with me. But next time, maybe we can do it. Professor Paranjape, I'm really, really glad to speak with you. And again, thank you very, very much for this conversation.
Thank you.